In this lesson, we're going to review the indirect formula. The indirect formula is used to find the value of a cell which resides in a different sheet by making an indirect reference. This is useful if you have data spread out across multiple sheets and want to summarize the data on another tab. This is especially useful if the data that is contained on the tabs is consistent and easy to locate, and the only change is the sheet name. Let's take a look at the formula explanation here. In the formula, the syntax is equal to indirect, open parentheses, quotations, ampersand, sheet name, ampersand, quotations, exclamation mark, ampersand, quotations, and then the reference cell. So the indirect part of this formula is to bring the value from a different sheet. So that's the part of the formula that's going to reference the other sheets in the workbook. The sheet part of the syntax is the sheet name from which we want to find the result. So as you can see at the bottom here, we've got multiple tabs set up in this workbook. Some are called January, February, March, April, May, June. And then we've got some that are referencing specific locations. So we've got months and then locations. So those are referred to as sheet names and part of the sheet syntax. The indirect is really the function or the formula that is used to bring everything together. And then the reference part of the syntax is the set of values in the sheet which is selected in the formula. So let's take a look at an example and apply the indirect formula. Let's make a summary which will provide the result from the respective monthly sheets for each of the below months. So again, we've got January through June that we want to analyze, and we've got tabs set up for January through June in this workbook. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of the sample tabs for January. As you can see, January is comprised of the P&L associated with the month of January 2018. We've got cash receipts, we've got payments made, and each of the cash receipts is split up by account, and each of the payments is also split up by the account, and we've got subtotals located within the spreadsheets as well. If I were to move over to the February tab, I can see that it's consistently portrayed and summarized with the exact same account names, the exact same structure and location of data. The only difference is the amounts and the dates. And the same goes for all the other tabs. So what I want to do is I want to create a situation here where I can summarize the cash receipts and the payments for the company. And what I want to do is use the indirect reference to be able to do a lookup of the monthly P&L for the company based on a drop-down list. And so that's what I've created here in cell G38. This is a great pick list that will allow me to toggle between the monthly P&L and showcase the P&L for the company just by clicking a quick drop-down button. And so as you can see, if I click on the month of January from the drop-down, it shows me the P&L for January, $444K of cash receipts, $245K of payments. And if I were to jump over to the January tab, I can see that those numbers are accurate. $444K of cash receipts, $245K of payments. And if I were to flip it to February in the drop-down, I can see that the cash receipts are $382K, total payments are $290K. And if I go over to the February tab, I can see that those numbers are accurate. And they're consistent with what shows up on the summary indirect tab here. So this is a great tool and great formula to use if you want to summarize your data, which is contained in multiple tabs, and just have a pick list that will allow you to pull in the data using the indirect formula. So how does this work? Well, if we take a look at one of the formula here, we can see that the service fee revenue is being pulled into the spreadsheet in cell G41 through a combination of a VLOOKUP and using the indirect formula. So as you can see, as written here, in order to perform the indirect reference, we're going to use the VLOOKUP to reference the financial statement account, which exists on the reference tab, i.e., in this case, if I switch it to January, it exists on the January tab. And then we're going to use a nested indirect formula to reference the specific sheets. For example, service fee revenue is a line item that we'd like to do a lookup on each of the individual monthly tabs and return the result on this tab within cell G41. In the below analysis, we have created a dropdown, so we created the dropdown in cell G38 for the sheet name. So the way in which we did that was we just highlight the months which exist in cells C22 through C27. We can go to the data validation section under data, and then we can create a list and we can just choose the source. And that's exactly what we did in cell G38. We used the source of cells C22 through C27 and created the list. So if I were to go into data validation for cell G38, I can see that it's set up. It's set up as a list. It references cells C22 through C27. And pay attention to the dollar signs that appear in the formula there. And the reason why they're there is because it locks the cells so they're not moving anywhere. So now that we have the pick list set up, and I can toggle between different months of the year, we can use that pick list to drive our lookup. So here we're doing a VLOOKUP of service fee, which is one of the accounts, and we're doing that lookup on the January tab. So we're nesting the indirect formula within the VLOOKUP, and we're doing the lookup of the January tab, and on the January tab, we're referencing cells D11 through G36. So let's take a look at cells D11 through G36 on the January tab. So cells D11 through G36 is really the whole table that we have here. And we want to capture the account name and the values that exist in the reference spreadsheets. So we're capturing D11 through G36, the entire table. If I go back to the indirect tab and go to the formula again, I can see that we've got that range of cells built into our formula. So again, we're doing a lookup of the account name, service fee. We're nesting the indirect formula. We're doing a lookup of the relevant sheet name, in this case January, which that will change depending on how we modify the pick list and what we choose from the pick list. And then consistently across each of the sheet names, because they're all set up in the similar format, we're doing a lookup of cells D11 through G36, and we're returning the fourth column of data that we find. And so let's go back over to the January tab and see what the fourth column of data is, starting with the column D. So starting with column D, if we were to count the number of columns from D from left to right, well, column 4 is the value field. It's really the P&L. And so in this case, since we're looking up the service fee cash receipts, it's going to return $331,000, $600 in the service fee revenue line item. Similarly for gas bill, that's doing a VLOOKUP of the gas bill account on the January tab here in cell G43, and so that's returning a value of $970. The electricity bill should return $111,836, and it does. And if we were to drop this down and flip it to February, we can see the breakdown of the revenue for February as well. So as you'll notice here, I wrote a description of an alternative way that you could have presented the data. Instead of doing a pick list, we could have presented the months in a columnar format across the top as a header, and we could have shown all months here. And then we could have done a VLOOKUP of each of them individually. But in this case, I wanted to create a pick list. I don't need to show all of them at once. I just wanted it as an act of reference point if I ever want to pull up any of the relevant data for a particular month. Instead of going and digging into the relevant tab, I just figured it would be a lot easier if I were to just toggle between the months here. Let's take a look at one more example here. In example 2, we want to perform a lookup to the other city worksheets that exist in this workbook here. As you can see at the bottom, we've got Beijing, Washington, Wellington, Canberra, and Ottawa as our cities that we have data on. And what I'd like to do is do a lookup using the minimum, maximum, and average formulas. What I want to find out is what is the minimum, maximum, and average temperature for each of these cities. And I can achieve that by using a combination of the min, max, and average formulas with a nested indirect formula. And that's very similar to the way in which we created our previous lookup using the VLOOKUP and the nested indirect formula. So instead of doing a VLOOKUP, this time we're going to use the min, max, and average. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. As you can see in the solution section here in cell E79, I've created another pick list. And the way in which I did that was I created a list in cells C73 through C76 of the individual city names. And then in cell E79, I went up to data and then data validation. And then I created a list, and the source of the list, I just referenced cells C73 through cells C76. I locked them using the $signs, pressed OK, and now I've got a drop-down list of each of the 4 cities. And when I click through them, the temperatures change because it's referencing the city name and doing an indirect lookup to the city tabs that I've got set up in the workbook. Now, keep in mind that if the city names didn't match the city tab name, then it wouldn't work. But in this case, I've exactly named them properly, and so the indirect function works. So let's take a look at the minimum, maximum, and average temperature here. We have a very similar approach in how we're writing this formula. First, we start with the minimum, maximum, or average formula, and then we nest the indirect formula within it, and the cell reference starts with the reference to the city. And the city in this case, we've got Canberra selected, but I can change it to Washington, Beijing, or Ottawa. And so that exists in cell E79. That stays locked. The next part of the formula is a reference to cells D12 through D41. And that's the cell reference of the range of cells that we want to perform our function on within the supporting tabs. So let's go over to the Wellington tab and see what cells D12 through D41 are comprised of. So if I go over to cells D12 through D41 on the Wellington tab, I can see it's just made up of the temperatures for that month. And so we're performing the min, max, and average calculations on that data consistently across each of the city tabs. Just to bring it all together and explain the formulas, the minimum formula is used to find the minimum temperature. The max formula is used to find the maximum temperature within the range. And the average formula is used to find the average temperature in the range. And so that's what we have summarized in cells E82 through E84 of this section here. And it's doing a lookup of the cities that we have available in this drop-down list. Hey guys, thanks for watching this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe from you. And if you want to learn more about Microsoft Excel, check out these videos above. And don't forget to check out our website, commercecurve.com, where we have lots of in-depth finance and accounting courses available with full training workbooks. All of our courses come with complete workbooks of lessons, examples, pre-built financial models, and training video. Hope to see you there.